I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to all of our, for all of you taking interest in today's topic. I'd like to recognize our colleagues from various housing agencies who are here as a resource to provide information and valuable connections. From the Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities, Thames River Community Service, Housing Development Fund, Always Home, Hope Incorporated, Safe Futures, CHAFA, and Senator Kathy Olston. If you can please silence your cell phones for me, and if we can please stand and do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, today, in lieu of a invocation, we have a special song written by Barbara Stanley about homelessness, and she is here to sing it for us today.
In the park, people walking by her as she sits there on the bench. Threadbare coat, she wraps her arms around her as she shares her crumbs with the birds, as she shares her meager meal with the birds. And if you take the time to notice, you can see it in her eyes. She is crying out in silence, but the world is blind to her cries. She's crying, help me. Can't you see I'm drowning? Won't you help me? I'm in over my head. Please help me. That's the message that you would have read in her eyes if you took the time. Oh, 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 if you took the time. Oh, 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 if you took the time. Hurry by, paper tucked beneath your arm and coffee in your hand. A cold wind blows, you wrap your scarf around you as you think about the comfort of your home, as you hurry to the comfort of your home. And if you take the time to notice as she sits there in her pain, and the cold wind blows around her, and her tears fall down like rain, and her tears fall down like rain. She's crying, help me. Can't you see I'm drowning? Won't you help me? I'm in over my head. Please help me. That's the message that you would have read in her eyes if you took the time. Oh, if you took the time, oh, if you took the time, oh, 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 please take the time.
Thank you very much, Barbara. We appreciate that. Now, if there's any servicemen or women in our audience today, would you please stand to be recognized? Thank you. Thank you for your service. At this time, I'd like to bring up Senator Austin. She has some brief remarks for us this morning.
So good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to see you all. So I went to the dentist this morning first thing, 7:15, so my face is all swollen on one side, so disregard. I came today just to say hi. I'm headed up to Hartford in 2 minutes to start or continue working on the state budget. You know, that little tiny document, about 800 some pages, that will impact all of our lives for the next 2 years. Talking to all of you is always really, really important because what you do is you help implement the housing policies that we establish. I would ask a couple things of you, and where I stand on housing policy is to have a balanced approach to housing, not do the rent control and some of the other things. I think landlords, in particular landlords in Eastern Connecticut, which are mostly small family businesses, are very important for us to make sure that they're able to keep that small business going. I can't say that enough because I find that some people neglect to understand that that is an actual business and you're not doing it just because you love housing. I hope you love housing because you're really important, but we want to make sure that you're going to be here and stay here. I also want to say that we have to pay attention to the terms that we use. So we use the term affordable all the time, and affordable means something different in every single community to every single person. So I've asked repeatedly, I'm not certain I'll get there this year, for a definition of what do we mean by affordable. Because if we're gonna change the demographics of a community or the affordability, we have to recognize what it means. And when affordable in Greenwich is $1 million, that's not affordable, doesn't mean anything to me. And I don't know that, and maybe some of you can move down to Greenwich and spend $1 million a month on that affordable place. I cannot. So I point that out because I find sometimes people use the term and it doesn't really equate to affordability. So those are the things that I'm looking for in housing policy, to have that balanced approach, to recognize both sides of the equations. I've rented before. I happen to own my house now. One of you great realtors sold me my house a number of years ago. I appreciate it. I just, most important exciting news, not the state budget. That's never exciting. It's not going to be exciting this year. I became a great grandmother 2 days ago, so I'm really, really excited about that. And my grandson bought a house with his wife in Bloomfield. And so they're starting a new family, and that's really what we need, is housing for those beginning new families that they can establish themselves in a community. We want people to stay in a community, and all the small towns that I represent, need people living in those communities that can volunteer in all the boards and commissions, be on the volunteer fire company, doing all the good community work. They can't do it if they have to buy a home that is too expensive and they have to work jobs that are not just one but two. So that's where I am on housing policy. Please talk to your legislators about where you are on housing policy, because it's extremely important that we get this right. I would encourage you all, I know Chaffa's gonna come and speak. I have a bill in with a number of my colleagues in Eastern Connecticut to make sure that people recognize that Eastern Connecticut has high opportunity. They're not a low opportunity area. The Chaffa map says that all of Eastern Connecticut, all 3 counties, are low opportunity. That's just not correct. And I'm working very hard to change that, because I want to make sure that the competitive grants and any other grants that are available for housing are also available to Eastern Connecticut real estate developers. So, thank you very much, guys. I'm headed up.
Thank you, Kathy. This program this morning is made possible in thanks to our annual sponsors and a housing opportunity grant from the National Association of Realtors. And one lucky attendee will be receiving an Amazon gift card for a beautiful propane fire pit later on this morning, but you have to be present to win. Now, I would like to introduce Dan Contino, our president-elect, to extend our sincere thanks to our annual sponsors who regularly support eCars, programs, and events, and who make your transactions run smoothly.
Good morning, everybody. My job this morning is just basically to announce our wonderful annual sponsors. I'm going to call out your name, I'll call out your company, you can call out your name, and when you could just stand up and give us a brief minute, that would be terrific. Let's start with Diamond sponsors, would be Chelsea Groton Bank, represented by Lisa Jancarelli and Donna Chappell. Are these ladies here? Is our Green Home Solutions, represented by Dustin Maurice. Dustin? Where'd he go? He was just here. All right, we'll catch up with them. Next is Law Office of Albanese and Canower. They're not here. Prime Lending. Strategia. Next up is our Platinum sponsors, Core Plus Federal Credit Union, represented by Kim Tundra. Kim?
Hi everyone, just want to let you know that I am also doing a lunch and learn on May 1st. So if you're interested in land loans, construction loans and renos, please come scan this and register. Thanks.
Where will it be held, Kim?
It will be held at the eCar building. I have no idea where that is.
All right, thank you. Dustin Maurice, I called your name a minute ago. Tell us a little something.
Green Home Solutions, we're the indoor environmental specialists, mold, mice, bacteria, and we're adding basement waterproofing. So that's down the pipeline, and we're going to do that very well. We'll take care of everything for you.
Very good, thank you. Next up is Homestead Funding by our T. Turner.
Good morning, everyone. Just wanted to offer that we have a two different programs for military members. A lot of you are used to hearing me talk about CHFA. Always glad to be at this meeting when they're here, where we take the CHFA loan, we add it to a VA loan to get them an even lower interest rate, stack on that time to own that free, well, I'll call it free $25,000 for lack of better terms. So it's allowing your buyers those military buyers to qualify for $25,000 more than they probably normally would for a normal VA loan. It's always a great product, great service for the people for our service members, as well as our in-house conventional 0% down loan that's only for military members. It's basically the VA loan without the bad things of the VA appraisal. It's a full conventional mortgage, 0% down, no PMI, all the good stuff of VA without the bad stuff of it. So if you guys have any questions about it, feel free to reach out. And yeah, thanks.
All right, next up is Liberty Bank. They're not here today. Next is Schaefer Inspection Services by Nicola Ford.
Hi everyone, I'm Nicola, Schaefer Inspection Service. So we have 8 inspectors, so we cover the entire state, and we can normally get you in within 24 to 48 hours. We do residential, commercial, and environmental testing as well. And I can also come to your office and do a lunch on that. So if you want any more information, see me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is our gold sponsors, National Property Inspections by our quiet and shy Kyle Clark.
Good morning, everybody. So yeah, I do inspections and radon, water. I'll see if you guys got any wood-destroying insects in there. I'll do septic, and I really try to make sure people are walking through the inspection in a way that keeps them at ease. So before you actually get the inspection, you're gonna know what's in it because I'm gonna walk you through all the photos and make sure everything step by step is clear for you. I do a 15% discount for military veterans. There was like 5 other things I wanted to say, but I forgot what they are. And so if you'd like to know more, please come see me. And thank you to those who aren't normally at these meetings that have shown up today. I've seen a lot of new faces here, faces I don't normally see, so thank you.
Thanks, Kyle. Next is Peck and Taniski. They're not here. Tiger Home and Building Inspections. Not here.
Yeah, they're here.
Hey, good morning. Bill Work from Tiger Building Inspection. What Nicola and Kyle said goes, same thing. Most importantly, Tiger is a second-generation family business. We've been in business for 33 years, third of a century. That's not easy to do for a lot of small companies in business today. And we support 24 families within our organization. So we're very proud to be here. We love supporting these things, and we're happy to help in every way we can. Thank you so much.
Next up is Comparison Insurance. Paul's not here. And then Taddick Title Insurance Company by my dear friend Mary Beth Barber.
Although title insurance is more the end of the transaction, we are at the beginning of the transaction. So once the P&S is signed, your search is done. So what we do is insure that title. If you need information on owner's title policies, I have pamphlets, I have PDFs of brochures, and if you aren't sure how to talk to your new-time buyers about owner's insurance, I can talk to you about it, and always, there's stuff on our website that we have, Taddick.com, we have a realtor section, so you can read about it there, because I always say knowledge is power. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. All of us at eCar and all of us realtors are truly grateful for all your support and services you provide us. We are a team all together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Right now, I would like to acknowledge all of our new members in the room, and if you would look at your program, they're listed there. If any of our new members are present, would you please stand and be recognized? Also, I'd like to recognize the eCar Board of Directors at this time. So I will call your name, and if you will please stand to be recognized. Molly Bruno, Mary Casabria, Carol Christensen, and Stephanie DiBiase, Rose Eapen, Greg Hanner, Greg Broadbent, Melissa Jean Grasso, Kelly Lucas, Marilyn Lusher, Norm Crane. Did I miss anybody? That's...
You missed me.
Ah, Dion! And Dan Contino, our president-elect. Thank you. All right, now I would like to welcome to the podium Quincy Clayton, who is our chair of our DEI committee, and he is going to introduce our speakers in our panel.
So when we look at the housing market today, I don't need to tell anyone in this room, it is a very, very divided housing market. We have winners who are the current homeowners who continue to build housing equity as home prices gain. And then we have what I will not say losers, they are strivers. They are absolutely trying to get into the housing market, and it's our first time home buyers. Largely this is young adults, but it is also concentrated if we look at non-white potential buyers. They are the ones who are really being shut out of the market. So that's what Susie asked me to talk about. So let me jump in and look at some of the affordability conditions, and then we'll look at some changing demographics as well. So when we look at home sales activity, we actually know that 2024 and 2023 closely matched 1995 in home sales volume. That's an extremely long time ago. If we think about that time period, 1995 to today, and just think of all of the changes that have happened and transpired over that time, we also have gained 75 million more people in this country. And yet, when we look at the end of 2024, we can see that the inventory within the country was actually lower in 2024 than it was in 1995. So we're really having a big mismatch there, which is driving up existing home sales prices. And even as we look at the dead of winter, when we look at February, what we can see is that home sale prices went up by, they continue to go up, they continue to hit all-time highs for any February that we've ever recorded. But what's also happening is continual bidding wars, and 20% of homes, even in February, went over the asking price for existing homes. And that really indicates this inventory shortage that we continue to be in. Interest rates, there's a lot of volatility this week, obviously, with the stock market that's also impacting the interest rates that we have. What I will say broadly is that interest rates are lower than what we saw in October of 2023. We can all agree to that. However, we know that people have different lock-in effects. If they have financed a mortgage during that very low trough, when we think about interest rates in that 2 and 3% range, they may be very unwilling or reticent to move. And so we know that lock-in effect is real. That's creating and compounding the inventory shortage as we think about the lack of movement in the market. That being said, we do know that life changes happen, and you can't just time a baby or marriage or divorce to an interest rate. And so there are people who are starting to move now regardless of that. We also know that those winners, those homeowners, when we think about today's environment, are gaining that housing wealth. They're gaining that housing equity. And so they're able to make a housing trade with a pretty sizable down payment right now, or even all cash. Again, home prices continuing to go up. What we're seeing now is that even existing homes are matching near where new homes are. When we look at home prices, there's a couple of reasons. One is the bidding wars, but the second reason is that new homes have gotten a little smaller. But there is really no deal when we think about the housing market today when we look at home prices. Home price appreciation continuing to go up. Within your state, really notably, it pops out actually in green, 63% home price increases from when we look at 2020 to 2024. That is substantial equity gains that homeowners are continuing to gain, certainly on the positive for homeowners as we look at this, but really, if we look at the flip side, that's causing affordability conditions. As we look at the qualifying income of someone who is looking to purchase a home, this only continues to go up. If we make that 1995 comparison, back then, qualifying income of $66,000 versus over $103,000 now. We also know this is with 20% down. That's a huge caveat to this data because we know that the typical home buyer, especially first-time home buyer, does not put 20% down. That qualifying income only has to be higher than this. We also know that the actual income of someone who purchased a home in the last 2 years has gone up by $26,000 in just 2 years. That is the median income, and what that means to me is we're essentially pushing out of the housing market our school teachers, our first responders, folks who we desperately want in our local communities are being priced out of living in our local communities. So inventory. So is there a solution today? When we look at inventory, we're seeing it go up. But I do want to just level set that when we look at those increases in inventory, even though it is going up, what we can see is we're still below February of 2020. And I think that's really notable when we think about the housing market. Even though we're seeing double-digit gains in inventory, percentage increases, this is great. We came from an all-time low. We have a long way to go. And so thinking about inventory in different ways, thinking about not just single-family homes, but perhaps adaptive reuse, bringing in smaller units, more affordable units. When we think about perhaps looking at vacant hotel motels, vacant schools, how can we bring residential units into our local communities? More housing for individuals. All right, so back on the positive side, perhaps however you want to read this, when we look at all cash buyers, we are seeing it is at an all-time high. So these are folks who are not financing at all. What I will say about this slide is this is based on primary residence buyers. If I look at vacation home buyers or if I look at investors, it's even gonna be higher than this, 50 and 40% respectively. When we look at repeat buyers in the market, so ones who would own their home, they're making a housing trade, it is at an all-time high. It's nearly a third of buyers. I also want to pull on the thread here that among first-time home buyers, 1 in 10 are actually purchasing with all cash as well. And as we look at that, how are they getting that money? Because we're looking at this very unaffordable market. Well, the bank of mom and dad comes in real good for some folks. So we know that people are using generational transfer. They're also using inheritances. Before perhaps this week, they were using the stock market as well. So cashing in stocks, cashing in cryptocurrency. This is a different type of first-time home buyer than what we have seen historically. That also means the down payments are higher, not just all cash purchases. We're seeing upticks there as well. Not a surprise for repeat buyers, but first-time home buyers, same sources when we're talking about where are they pulling that money from. All right, so I want to give you some demographic changes here too. I know that this is the focus of the continual program here, so I want to go through graph of just how low this is in comparison to what we have seen for past years. If we look before the Great Recession, it says my internet connection is unstable, so I'm going to turn off my camera and keep going. You all can hear me okay? Yes? Okay. So as we look at first-time home buyers, what we can see before the Great Recession is we would see 40% of the market were first-time home buyers. Today, it's just 24%. Obviously, inventory, obviously, affordability, those are the big reasons. But if we look outside of the housing market, we know that higher rents, inflationary environment, student loan debt, higher credit card, fees on those credit cards, also looking at things like childcare costs. Those are holding back potential buyers from entering into the market. So it's all of those factors outside of the housing market too that are compounding for these young adults. All right, so this is my favorite chart when we look at the housing market because we're looking at the US population overall. We're actually not even looking at the housing market. We're just looking at everyone in the US. So we've got little kiddos born in the last couple of years in this chart in the Gen Alpha. The bars get shorter over time here because of, I hate to say mortality rates, but that's what it is. So here we are. So I often try and make a joke and say people become ghosts or they go to heaven, but I don't know how well that's working when I'm booming into a room and I can't see your facial expressions of, oh my goodness, this is first thing in the morning. Okay, so in the middle of this chart, we have the millennial generation. There's 86 million millennials in this country. So they are overwhelmingly the largest generation in the US. As we look at this generation, a few things to pull out here. So the red bar, not a typo, this is 38 years old. This is the median age of a first-time home buyer today, 38. If we look at that historically, what we would see is the median age of a first-time home buyer was 28 years old. So this is 10 years older in one's life. What does that mean on a personal level? Well, lost housing wealth, certainly one less move that they could have in their lifetime. I want to flip this too and say that as we look at this chart, what we can see is a little population boom right there in the millennial generation, late 20s, early 30s. They're putting so much pressure onto the housing market today. This is an incredibly racially diverse generation, and what we can see is they're really trying to enter into the housing market. We also know they're doubling up with family at an all-time high rate that we have not seen before. In the last few years, the pandemic really spurred this activity, but a lot of people doubling up because of housing inaffordability as well. If we shift over to the yellow, what we can see here is a second red bar in the baby boomer generation. That is the median age of today's repeat buyer. They're 61 years old. So as we look at this, why does that matter? Well, if we looked back 40 years ago, we would see that the median age of a repeat buyer was just 36. That's younger than today's first-time home buyer. So as we think about that generational wealth that has been built by baby boomers, we can see a really big difference here for today's young adults versus today's baby boomers. Last week, we released a report on generational trends. It's all open. All of this data that I've been talking about is all NAR data. You can grab all of this data. This analysis is for you. Last week's generational trends report, the big finding that we saw was the biggest generation of home buyers today is not millennials. It's actually baby boomers. So they are dominating the housing market today. And as we look at that shift, it means a lot of things. So we're seeing that they're able to purchase a home with all cash. When we look at older baby boomers, more than half of them are purchasing their home with all cash, they're not financing at all. About 40% of younger boomers paying all cash for their home purchase. When we look at millennials, we divide them up as well. So young millennials really being held back from being first-time home buyers today, while older millennials may actually have locked in a lower interest rate and they're just not moving. So we're seeing all of these converging trends in the housing market all at once. So why does all this matter? Well, we used to think that there would be this silver tsunami and all the baby boomers would pass away, become ghosts, and they would give these homes to young adults. We cannot look at this as a solution to our housing crisis. This is not a solution. They are planning on living in their homes for 20 years when they go to purchase. So this is something we have to look past this. I also want to talk a little about race when we look at this as well. So we have a snapshot of race report that we've been doing for several years at NAR. It gives us a really good idea of who's entering into the housing market and their racial and ethnic characteristics. So as we look at this, what we can see is we have had real sustained growth in Hispanic and Asian home buyers, and you can see real growth there. Also, Black home buyers are coming up, but it is worth noting, and I'll show you on the next slide, just the homeownership gap that we continue to have between white and non-white Americans. Most pronounced is among Black and white Americans. So as we look at this, I'm showing you your Connecticut statistics here. This is your homeownership rate, and you can dive into this report. Again, all of this is your data to use how you would like, and there is so much in this report. It is chock full of data, but I tried to summarize it here on just a couple slides. So if you look at the homeownership rate, we can see really big divides here, right? So between the white and the Black homeownership rate, and the Hispanic homeownership rate within your state, we can see some pretty substantial divides here. 74% homeownership rate versus 40% for Black folks, Black households within your state, and 40% among Hispanic households within your state. As we look at the share of renters who can purchase a home, I think this is incredibly important as we talk about housing affordability. What we can see here actually is that 35% of Asian households within your state who are renters can actually afford to purchase a home. So that is an opportunity for growth. That's an opportunity to bridge that gap when we look at that homeownership rate gap. The other thing that the researchers did this year is that they wanted to understand the share of households within specific age ranges. We just talked about how important that is and how these new households are really trying to have household formation and enter into homeownership. So as we look at this, what we can see is the biggest categories that should be adding into the homeownership rate are actually all non-white renter households. We can see 35% nearly for Hispanic renters within that age range where you typically purchase your first home, nearly 30% for Asian households, and nearly 39% for Black households. So you can see real growth should be happening and those gaps should be narrowed here. The last one I want to leave you on is there is a lot of reasons why there are these historical differences in the homeownership rates, and whether that's a disproportionate amount paid to rental costs by non-white households, especially Black households, a disproportionate amount of student loan debt, a lack of generational transfers of wealth that we talked about is so important. We also know the denial rate for mortgages continues to be higher for both Black and Hispanic households nationwide. It's not just your state, it's everywhere. And so as we look at this, that is one of those ways to bridge the gaps. The report not only dives into all these stats, they actually give suggestions of how you can approach this report, how you can use this data into your practice. So definitely encourage you to check it out. The last slide I'm going to give you, and I know I'm right at time, is that we are seeing some really big differences among successful home buyers by race as well. So even as we look at successful home buyers, those who did purchase a home in the last year, you can see some huge differences here. Among all non-white households who are home buyers in the last year, what we can see is that they are more likely to be first-time home buyers. So when we talk about that first-time home buyer share, when we talk about those young home buyers really entering into the market, this is so compounded when we talk about fair housing issues, we talk about race in housing. This is where we can really see sustained growth, when we can really see those millions of people being added in as new home buyers, is that first-time home buyer share being new home buyers, not just housing trades. Looking at multi-generational households, that's something that I think is fascinating here. It allows for an opportunity to purchase, but we could also see a financial drain within a household too. If someone is not financially contributing, it can float both ways. And the last one I'll give you is just single female buyers. We can see a really high share among Black women, really something to be celebrated because they're doing so on such a lower household income compared to everyone. Among all single women buyers, they're doing so on a lower household income. So really something to be celebrated there as they outperform their single male peers. So, all right, with that, I talked really fast and I gave you a ton of data. I'm going to make sure that Susie has these slides so she can hand them out to you, and I'll turn back on my camera here. But if you're not following us on social, I do encourage that because you can grab tons of great information like this. So thank you so much.
This series, why we're here today, is it actually took place, it began back in February 27th when ECAR partnered with the Norwich Race Equity Committee and the Norwich Area Interfaith Association to premiere the powerful film No Address. Anyone here see it? By a round of applause, did you love it or like it? Loved it. The film shed light on the realities of homelessness in America, challenging misconceptions and deepening our understanding of the housing crisis as a backdrop for NAR's 2025 legislative priority to update America's tax law to increase access to homeownership, ensure equal access to professional representation, and support fair housing. So today, we shift focus to increasing housing supply in Eastern Connecticut with an emphasis on affordable housing, where we're going to talk about what affordable means hopefully in the future as a new definition. While addressing the deep-rooted discrimination that persists. So in New London County alone, homeownership rates remain deeply unequal, as you saw even in the slides you saw today from Dr. Laus, with Black homeownership lagging behind white ownership by 30%, and for Latino households, the gap nearly 40%. Systemic barriers persist with 42% of Blacks and 37% of Hispanic buyers struggling to access mortgage financing. And you also saw the discrepancy even within the mortgage denial rates in the slides you just seen. Compounding the issue, Connecticut rents have surged by a whopping 25% in just the past year, putting stable housing further out of reach for our potential new buyers in the future. Meanwhile, the state needs more than 85,000 affordable housing units just to meet the demand. As real estate professionals, we have the power to shape housing policy and drive meaningful change, and that's one of the reasons why we are back here today. The NAR Opportunities Housing Grant empowers us to expand housing opportunity with inclusivity at the forefront. So today, our expert panel will assess housing affordability and explore creative, equitable solutions to help people achieve the dream of home ownership, especially for historically underserved communities. Unfortunately, if you were following this event, you noticed that we had a change of one of our panelists. Our state CEO was called to action this morning or in the busy legislative session. So our panel today includes what you've already were part of with Dr. Jessica Laus, who was the NAR's Deputy Chief Economist and VP of Research. We also have Beth Sibilia, who is the Executive Director of the Center for Housing Opportunity in Eastern Connecticut. Brian, I should have asked how to pronounce these names in advance. Rookie mistake. But I'm going to pronounce this or announce this the way I can see it. Boyaji, you got it. Brian Boyaji, he's the Business Development Officer for CHFA, the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, and Suzanne Piacentini.
Yes.
So I'm very excited to have in the room today for lots of reasons. She's the HUD Connecticut Field Office Director, and their bios you can find in the program today. So we're going to begin our panel with a presentation by Beth Sibilia on housing needs assessment, and then we're going to follow it up with a conversation with Brian and Suzanne, and that from there we will have an opportunity for you to have questions and hopefully answers to those questions.
Thank you to the Eastern Connecticut Association of Realtors for the invitation here. It feels a little bit like coming home. I was a real estate lawyer for 28 years, and my first boss, Val Votto, is sitting in the room. So it's great to be here today. I am the director of the Center for Housing Opportunity in Eastern Connecticut. We recently changed our name to comply with the executive orders out of Washington from the Center for Housing Equity and Opportunity in Eastern Connecticut. That does not change our mission, however. I'm not going to read this to you, but suffice it to say it's in the program. We believe in housing for all, that housing is a human right, and that we need to preserve and protect affordable housing. Our core strategic partners at the center is the Housing Collective, which is my employer. They're based out of Bridgeport. They handle the homeless response system for the western part of the state, so Fairfield and Litchfield counties. In doing that work, it discovered that it couldn't solve for homelessness unless you solve for housing, and therefore the centers were launched. The Partnership for Strong Communities is our policy and advocacy group, and LIST Connecticut. LIST is a CDFI. They provide financing and technical assistance to nonprofit and for-profit developers. We have regional partners, the Community Foundation of Eastern Connecticut, Connecticut College, Eastern Connecticut State University, and the United Way of Southeastern Connecticut. This CHO is the third in the state and the only center that has the 2 academic partners, and for that we are grateful. So what do? We provide technical assistance to municipalities and developers looking to either implement affordable housing plans through zoning reform at various towns and cities throughout Eastern Connecticut. We also provide peer learning, informational webinars, seminars, meetings, networks. We actually have one, I'm just gonna pull out the date, I think it's May 14th in Eastern Connecticut with CHAFA to talk about first-time homebuyer programs. So keep an eye out for that. It will be a lunchtime webinar on the 14th. We support our partners. I see Hope is here, Always Home is here, Thames River Family Program is here. We provide technical assistance if they're looking to expand or apply for various programs. And we support development pipelines. We want to see the increase of additional housing options at all levels. What I'm going to talk about is not inconsistent with your prior speaker. It's just drilled down for Eastern Connecticut. When we talk about Eastern Connecticut, we mean New London, Windham, and Tolland counties, so the eastern part of the state. We produce research policy tools. One that we're going to talk about today is our housing needs assessment. We provide policy briefs on changes that we find would be conducive to additional production of affordable housing. We publish a weekly zoning calendar. So if you sign up, you can get a list of every zoning meeting, if you're interested, in Eastern Connecticut. We also had a narrative change work group that developed a playbook and a housing conversations toolkit to learn how to talk about housing in Eastern Connecticut. So we deployed surveys throughout the community to determine how people in Eastern Connecticut viewed housing and how they viewed housing in relation to the rest of the state. And then we are currently studying who makes land use decisions. We have a database of every planning, zoning, ZBA, all the various land use decision makers in Eastern Connecticut. We will be publishing who sits in those seats and how to get involved in becoming a land use commissioner or decision maker. So, our housing needs assessment. We convened, Eastern Connecticut has 4 councils of government that have towns in Eastern Connecticut. So there's CCOG, Southeastern Connecticut Council of Government, Lower River COG, CREC, Capital Region, excuse me, and I'm missing one. CCOG, Northeast COG, excuse me. And we also convened Sector. Many of you know Sector as the regional economic planning organization in Hartford Healthcare. So all of these parties oversaw the Eastern Connecticut housing needs study that I'm going to go through with you. RPA, Regional Plan Association, was our publisher. So, New London, Windham, and Tolland counties. So this is completely consistent with the data that you saw on a national level and on the statewide level. This is just for the eastern part of the state. Our population has increased by 10,000, more than 10,000 people. But we've had households increase by 6,000. And there are reasons for that. And this is the primary driver. More than 56% of our households are comprised of 1 to 2 people, which really kind of stands on its head our notion of family and neighbors and how we're living. And of those households, 56,000 earn at or below 80% of the area mean income, but there are only 25,000 affordable units for these neighbors. I just want to pause for a second. Affordable units are deed restricted, or they also include government-assisted mortgages like CHAFA, VA, those sort of programs. So that's how they're counted in those affordable numbers, just broadly speaking. And since 2000, almost half of the region's municipalities built 0 2 to 4 family buildings, 0. While a quarter of the municipalities built no multifamily buildings at all in Eastern Connecticut. There are 52, depending on how you count, between 51 and 52 towns in Eastern Connecticut. So that's significant. And we do build roughly half of what we built in the early 2000s. And there are 58,000 of us that are living at or below the federal poverty level, or are what we call ALICE households. They're asset limited, income constrained, employed households. That is the United Way's annual publication. Adjusted for inflation, you can see income has decreased while housing costs have increased. So the income has decreased by 5% and housing costs have increased by 15%. And that's across all renters, homeowners, all households. This is what New London County shows us. 60% of the households are 1 to 2 people, but only 40% of the homes are designed with 2 or fewer bedrooms. And as I said, in New London County, remember I talked about that larger number, this is what it looks like for New London County. There's 29,000 households Attleboro area mean income, and only 14,000 units available for them. And less than 5% of the homes built since 2000 consist of 2 to 4 unit buildings. So we're building wrong. I mean, it appears that we're building wrong. And this is the same data for Windham County, and it's not substantially different. It holds true throughout Tallinn County as well. I didn't cover Tallinn County because it has a different board, but thought it would be interesting to see that it holds true there. So we have fewer people and more households. So you can see here, all 3 counties in eastern Connecticut, the yellow bar is the reduction in population, and the blue bar is the increase in household creation. So you can see there's a definite mismatch. And what is a household? This is what it looks like in graph form. You can see New London County, 29% of us live alone. Almost 31% of us live in 2 families, 2 people or fewer households. And roughly the same holds true, a little bit less in Windham County. But by and large, that's how the majority of us live in both counties. This just shows on the housing needs assessment that you can, if you're interested, you can go into the data tool and toggle your town and compare it to the larger community. Here we show Wallentown and Norwich. And again, these are just 2 Windham County towns, Windham, which includes Willimantic, and Canterbury. Tried to pick kind of more urban areas and a little bit more rural areas to show you that the trends hold true in both places. And where do people live? This is a graph, the orange graph. It should be no surprise to this board of realtors that those are single-family detached homes. And New London has about 65%, Windham has about 68% that live in single-family detached homes. Again, it's probably 1 or 2 people, but they're living in a single detached. Housing unit types, again, this shows you how you can drill down between Wallentown and Norwich. You can see a discrepancy here between a more what we consider suburban or rural community like Wallentown and one that's a little bit more urbanized like Norwich. You see that there's a 40% swing in people living in single-family detached homes, which would indicate that Norwich is a little bit more dense in terms of 5+ unit multifamily housing. And you can see it here too. Windham, which is our urban center, including Willimantic, and Windham County versus Coventry. So you can see density is focused on our urban cores. These are owner-occupied versus rented. And I didn't know before I started this that nearly 1/3 of us are renters. Before I started drilling down, nearly 1/3 of us are renters here in Connecticut, which I think surprises a lot of people. Population trends in terms of age, we're getting older. There's no other way around it. You see a decrease in school-age population all across eastern Connecticut, all across Connecticut, and an increase in age. These are the population trends for New London and Windham County. You can see our bars are really kind of large post-50, right? We have a very highly weighted older population compared to the younger populations. Our graphs just go off the charts. We have seen an increase in annual employment across eastern Connecticut. A lot of that has to do with accelerated hiring at EB, as well as continued growth at both tribal nations. Who is ALICE? These are folks that are asset limited, income constrained, employed. And you can see this displays the New London County households by every town, same with Windham. And you can see that we have, I just don't want to misspeak, but New London, right here, has more than 50% of its households either living in poverty or are ALICE. And and when you drill down into those numbers, the vast majority of the people in ALICE population are single, female-headed households. But there's enough affordable housing, right? Right, so you can see Groton, New London, Norwich tend to lead the way in eastern Connecticut, and again, our urban core in Windham leads the way, but there's simply not enough affordable housing. Many of you are familiar with the statute 830G. 830G is an articulation of an ideal that a community would have 10% or more affordable housing stock. And again, that includes deed restrictions and mortgage products. You can see the vast majority of the communities between New London and Windham counties do not reach the 10% threshold, which gives rise to a developer claiming the remedy under 830G. So I just want to pause for a second. Some people think 830G is a mandate. It's really a developer's remedy, it's not a housing policy. It allows the developer to go in and say, you don't have the aspirational goal, and therefore suspend zoning and the like so we can build affordable to meet that goal. But if that's all it is a remedy. Not a surprise. You can see Tolland and Wyndham counties had more of an increase in the median single-family home price. Again, consistent with your prior speaker. Now, this shows households that are paying more than 50% of their income on housing. And I just, for the back of the room, that's the 10%. So anything, they're all paying 50% more of their income on housing costs. And when we talk about housing costs, we talk about if you're doing mortgage, principal interest, taxes, and insurance. We've seen steep escalations in both of those latter categories. This just shows transportation costs. It just goes to quality of life, how much and how long you have to commute to get to where you need to go, and what it does to your pocketbook. Our annual transportation costs are very high, which again underpins an argument that there should be more planning closer to transit centers so that we don't see this high level of transit cost. These are the housing cost burden households by income. I want to pause a second. Many of you know that area mean income is not wages. Area mean income includes interest, dividend payments, things that are earned outside of work. So area mean income is a measure of just that, all of the money that's in the area and the mean of that. So here, 0 to 30% of area mean income in Eastern Connecticut. Who are we talking about? People that are on Social Security only, small pensions, people that are on disability pensions. Those tend to be people that are in the 0 to 30% of area mean income. And you can see that we have more than 20,000 households that are cost burdened. They're paying more than 50% of their income toward housing. And the same, you see the same problem in the 30 to 50% and 50 to 80%. It also affects people at 80 to over 100% area mean income. There are, between the two, nearly 6,000 households paying more than 50% of their income on housing costs, and therefore our housing cost burden. So, available data sets, if you want to download any data, if you're doing some market analysis, deep dives into this, you can download every single town for those 4 COG regions, which also includes the bulk of Hartford County. So what do we need to do? We need to have more diverse housing typologies throughout Eastern Connecticut to meet the needs of various ages, lifestyles, and incomes. We need all kinds of housing, single families, duplexes, multifamilies, the old triple decker when I lived in Boston. We need to see more mixed use, mixed income developments. They're more sustainable for our communities. And try to locate housing closer to transit, both in terms of an environmental impact and just quite frankly, dollar impact to residents living there. Work on preserving and rehabbing existing housing stock. We tend to build new affordable housing, which is the most expensive thing to do, and we forget about the housing that's dropping out of the bottom, essentially, being taken off the market, whether it be deeded affordable or what we consider naturally occurring affordable housing. We're losing that at a larger rate than we can build. So we need to focus on rehabbing and preserving those. And also, we need to have thoughtful, innovative design. A lot of the objections people talk about in terms of any housing development is the look of it. So increase in innovative, thoughtful housing typology is really crucial to changing the narrative around what housing and affordable housing looks like. What are the impediments? I talked to you about zoning. Building regulations are also an impediment to many, many rehabs. And there's ongoing discussion at the legislature on how to align the building regulations with increased preservation. Not in my backyard NIMBYism. We're changing that to YIMBYism. There's a YIMBYism conference in New Haven in September to talk about what good quality design looks like. Again, I talked about design. Lack of grant funding. This is part of what we work on a lot. How do you apply, if you want to build something, where does that capital stack come from and what do you need to develop that capital stack? And we have a lack of capacity. That's not It's just an indication of essentially municipal austerity. Towns are doing far more with far less in terms of staff. So there's a lack of capacity at the municipal level to coordinate. And Eastern Connecticut, we're always looking for new builders. 2 weeks ago, we had a developers meeting with the Commissioner of Housing. We would like to see more builders build additional, multifamily housing, but also smaller types of single family detached housing on smaller lots with fewer parking requirements. I don't know about you, but it drives me crazy to drive by a place and see acres of blacktop. It makes no sense at all, some of the parking requirements that we have in our municipalities. So why is the data helpful? Because we try and talk about data so that decisions aren't made on opinion or hyperbole or emotion. And housing is emotional. It's where you bring your baby home. It's where some of you have seen your spouse take their last breath. It's emotional. Housing is emotional. So we need to work on the data and combine the emotion of need with the data to develop more housing. That's more appropriate. That's our contact information. I am the director. Nicole McCormack is our project manager, and we also have a regional planner on staff who is prepared to assist with grant applications for development. And our website is right there as well. So thank you. Oh, just one more thing, Quincy, before I turn it over to you. I talked to you about the CHAFA dates. We are also going to be at Eastern Connecticut State University on the 16th and 28th of April for lunch from 12 to 1:30. We're going to be talking about housing justice and education and housing justice and families. And on May 20th at 5:30, we will be at the Arts Capitol Theater screening Fighting for Home, followed by a panel discussion. So thank you. Thank you, Quincy.
And I am going to just begin by maybe asking some questions, just trying to find out a little bit about who you are. So Suzanne, if you don't mind, can you give us an overview of your role as HUD's Connecticut Field Officer Director?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the Realtors for having HUD here today. And thank you for all you do to bring housing to communities and enable people to purchase a home, find a rental. We wouldn't be successful without all of you, so thank you. As Field Office Director, I have oversight over HUD's programs. Our HUD programs touch every place in the state. People tend to forget, not you, but others, that FHA is part of HUD. So everything from home ownership to community development to multifamily rental, public housing, vouchers, community development are all under our umbrella, as well as the homelessness program currently as well. And prior to that, I was the Director of Multifamily Housing and did a lot of development work here in Eastern Connecticut, especially on elderly housing. So I've been in HUD a very long time, and again, we couldn't do it without you, so thank you all very much.
Thanks so much, Suzanne. Many of us, this would be an interesting poll. Who here is a realtor that actually is selling homes? Okay. Leave your hand up if you have done at least one CHAFA transaction in your career.
All right, let's go.
You can put them down in front of me. So Brian, can you give us an overview then of how homebuyer programs, down payment assistance, and pre-home buyer education are making impact in Connecticut?
Sure, and again, thank you guys for having us today. Thanks to you for hosting Quincy and for Susie for putting this all together. This is beautiful. Sold out event, I could see. No empty seats, but so normally when I do these outreach presentations, I'm speaking to home buyers. I'm not normally speaking to realtors, so sometimes I do a synopsis of the real estate market, but I definitely don't have to do that today. Jessica did an amazing job with that, of course, and you guys are the experts. You guys know exactly what's out there, and you see it. The last couple of years have been challenging. Obviously, inventory has been very limited. It's led to high demand for housing. Prices have gone up. It's made it super challenging for any home buyer really to purchase a home right now. It's super competitive. Even tremendously more challenging for that low to moderate income first-time home buyer. So that's where CHAFA comes in. We've been around for over 50 years, and we're always innovating and trying to come up with new and creative ways to help that first-time home buyer. So there's three things we're kind of built on. Our three pillars are our first-time home buyer programs, which have low rates and low closing costs, always have. The second one is our powerful down payment assistance programs. We've had one for many, many years that I'll go into, and a newer one that's going to come up on 3 years this June. And the third one is, of course, the free homebuyer education. We partner with 12 different HUD-approved counseling agencies to offer free homebuyer education to those first-time homebuyers. You know, education is power. A lot of borrowers are scared to jump into this market. They think it's intimidating and it's impossible, but it's not. And you know, when they work with that counselor and get that free education, they build that confidence. And you know, that's kind of the first step. So going to our first-time homebuyer programs, we partner with actually up to 90 different lenders in Connecticut now. That number has increased a lot over the years because CHAPA has become very popular with our innovative programs. 4 of them are actually sponsors today. We have, I saw Keith from Homestead. I think he left the room now. He said he had an emergency. But Kim over there with Core Plus, and Liberty and Chelsea. I saw we're sponsors too. So we have over 90 lenders. They all have brick and mortar offices in Connecticut. We do require that because we want the borrower to have the option to go work with that loan officer in person, you know, however they want to engage business. Our rates are super low right now. We post them every day at 9 o'clock. As of yesterday, it was 6.125% on the FHA and VA and USDA, 6.5% on the conventional. And those are with 0 points and low closing costs that we fix for the borrower. So the that really limits the borrower's out-of-pocket expense, which is really great. The next thing is the down payment assistance programs. Again, we have 2 of them. We have DAP, which has been around for many, many years and had some different reincarnations. At the current time, it's up to $15,000. It's a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. You use it towards your closing costs and down payment, and it's fixed at 5%, which is a really favorable rate for a 30-year fixed rate for that $15,000. That uses our regular income limits. Then the new one that I'm sure everybody in the room knows about, just a quick show of hands, Time to Own. Have you guys heard of it? Oh yeah, this is great, you know, because normally when I do the homebuyer presentations, I only get like maybe 20% of the room to raise their hand on that, but glad you guys know about it. That's coming up on 3 years, and of course that's been super powerful. That is $25,000 for your down payment and closing costs at 0%, forgivable at 10% a year over 10 years, which is absolutely phenomenal. That's been a huge game changer for us, certainly helped many home buyers in this current environment who are dealing with the struggles of inflation. You know, the cost of rent's gone up dramatically, the cost of groceries, the cost of gas, the cost of eggs, everything's gone up. So having that $25,000 in their arsenal has been incredibly helpful and powerful to these home buyers. And then the last thing, well, actually, no, I want to quickly mention Time to Own could be layered with other down payment assistance programs. That's a big part of the success. It plays well with others. And I'm actually glad that Jackie is back there with HDF, because I do a lot of events with Jackie. They have amazing programs. If you haven't seen them, check them out. But you can combine a CHAPA First Mortgage, our Time to Own, and Jackie's HDF programs, and really maximize the borrower's resources. If they qualify for all these programs, it opens the door for them to reach that home even more so, which is absolutely phenomenal. So we're fortunate to have this program. Just quickly, I'll say that the governor proposed another $100 million in the budget for that program for the next 2 years. That's his first pitch. I hope it goes through the House and the Senate and that money is there, because that lifeblood will certainly help a lot more borrowers. And then last but not least, we work with our amazing counseling agencies to offer that free homebuyer education with the free workshops that offer education on pre-approvals, shopping for a home, and ultimately the closing process. Thank you.
That is a lot of information.
Yep. Fire hose, sorry.
One of the things I like to do is, as much as I love a script, I sometimes deviate a little bit. I am going to deviate a little bit because as the presentation was presented just a moment ago by Beth, there was a blaring question that jumped out at me, and I'm just curious to know what your opinion is, Beth, as to why multi-families are not being built. And how can we support the efforts with builders to maybe get more of those built?
Part of it is accessibility to infrastructure in Eastern Connecticut. My counterpart in Litchfield runs into the same issues, that many communities are very small with lack of sufficient infrastructure to handle larger multifamily buildings. So what do? We build them smaller. We infill them. So that's one thing in Eastern Connecticut, is building smaller. There is pending legislation to update, I know this is not a great conversation in the morning, but our septic capacity and how we measure and what kinds of septic systems are permitted here in Connecticut. There are high-tech systems that are permitted in Massachusetts and Rhode Island that allow for increased density because they are more sophisticated systems. So we have some regulatory barriers there. The cost of land here is very expensive, especially in those areas with infrastructure. Infrastructure is a huge value add for anybody looking to develop any type of housing, but in particular multifamily housing. We are limited in Connecticut to the number of bedrooms for capacity in septic systems. And with these larger septic systems, we can still have freedom from large infrastructure commitments like tens of millions of dollars of sewer treatment plants, and we can have an increase in multifamily housing. I also think we need to look at ways of infilling in Eastern Connecticut. There are lots of areas. I took Route 12 down from the Danielson area. I just went along Route 12. There are great swaths of undeveloped or abandoned commercial space. We need to look at infill of housing along those corridors that already exist, and look at those corridors differently.
Interesting. So then, Suzanne, I think what a wonderful segue for you then. So how does HUD's work in, because I know HUD supports over 91,000 housing units across Connecticut. Can you break down maybe some key programs that make this possible for them to support this number of?
Sure, and this is totally rental that we're talking about in the 91,000. That consists of low-income public housing, traditional housing owned by our housing authority partners across the state, housing choice vouchers, which are issued by our housing authority partners. State of Connecticut is our largest voucher program and are used statewide, as well as our multifamily housing, which is privately owned, publicly subsidized, in many cases housing. About 63% of our multifamily housing stock is has a subsidized unit. We don't use the term affordable, which I know Kathy Austin wants to get rid of. A lot of times the state mentions affordable. They use our housing income limits, but that is not a HUD term. I probably get one call a week on that. But we do support housing across those three primary subsidized programs. Along with that, we support the development housing and housing through the monies we give to communities directly, as well as state of Connecticut to spread across small cities. And that's through our CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, as well as our home programs. And all of those go to work very cooperatively with CHFA and DOH's programs. We've muscled through how to work together as agencies long ago, thankfully, and our programs do merge very well in Connecticut, because not one of us can afford to build all the housing units. It really takes a combination of our programs to make it successful.
You know, as Brian was speaking, I thought of an example of how I had a buyer who was just, quite frankly, just not getting the bid won. I had a conversation about potentially maybe switching to a CHFA program with this potential for the $25,000 forgivable grant. And all of a sudden, I gave them $25,000 more in buying power, and the very next document we wrote, they won the bid. Brian, can you give any examples? Do you have any real life scenarios where you can maybe talk about how different chapter programs really have an impact and to cause more success with home ownership?
Yeah, sure. So by the way, it's tremendous to hear that, and glad to hear that stories like that where you had a borrower or home buyer and they looked to a CHFA lender and that helped bridge the gap. Last year, by the way, was a banner year for CHFA. Our biggest year since 2007. We actually funded over 3,873 loans last year, first mortgages, so actual home buyers last year, which is phenomenal. That's our biggest year since 2007, which I find amazing because I was a loan officer back then during those years, and to have a banner year with that much volume in a year with down inventory just shows that we're making that difference. 2,400 plus of those borrowers were using time to own. So that was amazing too, and it was over $1 billion in funding. One story, and I have my notes here, just quickly, from 2023. So we had a borrower who was a single mom, and she had a 14-year-old and a 4-year-old. She was looking for a home in the city of Hartford, and obviously, kind of like your home buyer, was having a hard time bridging the gap. Thankfully, they worked with a lender who was one of our great lenders, who helped, like I said before, layer other sources of down payment assistance. They got a CHFA first mortgage, they got time to own, And then, reading my notes here, they got funds from the city of Hartford, and then our good friend Jackie in the back, funds from HDF. They had HDF Home Ownership Equity Fund, HDF Live Where You Work, HDF Project Reinvestment. These are all programs that she qualified for. HDF Closing Cost Assistance Deferred Loan Program, and lastly, funds from the Federal Home Loan Bank Equity Builder. So if you're keeping score at home, that's 7 different sources of subordinate financing that she qualified for with the Chaffa First Mortgage at a low rate. So she was able to buy a $229,000 home in Hartford with a mortgage, first mortgage, of only $63,000. Her principal and interest payment was about less than $400 a month. It was $390 and change. So she would have never qualified for this house otherwise. And that's just a great example of how our programs, when combined with other resources, can be absolutely game-changing and life-changing for borrowers who can qualify.
Before I move on, because I could just talk on forever and ever and ever and ever, is there a pressing question in the audience that would just shout one out? I see one hand in the back.
I'm wondering if the lack of updated community housing, like they took down everything on Crystal Avenue in London and not replacing those units and stuff, that must have a huge impact. Or the maintenance that goes along with those. I know that there's a lot of problems with deferred maintenance in those type of buildings.
Yeah.
So that's what's causing them to be.
If you could restate the question
Sure.
for our online community.
Stephanie asked if, the loss of units that weren't rebuilt, such as State Pier or Crystal Avenue in New London, the high rises that were adjacent to kind of under the bridge. My first public office was in New London Housing Authority as a commissioner, and I remember walking through that site being told it's not that bad by the executive director, and I thought, but you don't live here, right? So you say it's not that bad, and when we're making that kind of comparison that some people are worthy of good quality sanitary housing and some people are not, we've got a problem. The Housing Choice Voucher Program through HUD was used, and the state was used to relocate tenants throughout sites. Some people left the state. Many went through different communities outside of New London. So there was a loss of kind of community fabric there too that I don't want to miss speaking about. These were neighbors. These were people that raised families in the city of New London. They played on our football teams and were on our cheering squad. So these are our neighbors. We lost our neighbors when that housing came down and they scattered. We in New London, the Housing Authority is looking at increasing units along Gordon Court. Gordon Court is near the Coast Guard Academy. They're about 300 square foot efficiency, 1-level brick buildings, and they're kind of tucked near an electrical substation. They're looking to take those units down, rebuild, and increase the number of units. I will say, and maybe this HUD can speak to this, we're all concerned about the loss of federal funding to support our most vulnerable residents. The residents that live there, one of my friends, Tim, he makes $911 a month in Social Security disability. He has no family. His community is it. And he pays for about $300 a month in rental to the New London Housing Authority. So there are constraints when things are broken. That's all the Housing Authority gets for that unit. There is no additional subsidy for that unit. So we need to pay attention to those units that are most vulnerable.
Speaking of subsidies, it may not necessarily be 100% related, but Suzanne, how does HUD's work in mortgage insurance, public housing, and vouchers directly impact Connecticut residents?
Well, these are your neighbors. These are the people who live your neighbor, your grandparents, your neighbor's grandparents, your parents, your children. My children who moved from Texas and are living with me. So how do they impact it? Every single state in Connecticut has at least one FHA. Every single community has at least one FHA mortgage. That means the federal government supported that unit. People rent, people have vouchers, voucher rent in units. Those units pay your taxes in every community. These are housing investments across the entire income spectrum, whatever you'd like to call it, from the very lowest, our elderly folks who served our country, paid their dues. only have Social Security, which, as you know, cannot pay for a unit in Connecticut. And we want these people to remain. Our grandchildren need their grandparents in the area. HUD supports communities. In terms of future funding, I'm sorry, I am not at liberty to discuss that. You know, I'm sorry. I'm a Connecticut person. I grew up in the housing world here in Connecticut, but right now we're transitioning, and you know, we don't even have the results of the CR and what we're going to see for funding. But people are calling our office. We're, you know, certainly working. We have been subject to a fair amount of layoffs, but we are doing our best locally.
I did see other hands. I'm going to try to get maybe one or two more. We are going to be at a pretty hard stop in about 5 minutes, so you know.
Hi, Brian. This is to follow up on what you had presented. Are all the loan officers familiar with all these programs? Like, you ran through so many, I already forgot some of them.
Yeah.
Like, if you had a list, who do we know? It seems our buyers, we all have buyers that can't qualify for things, and they sound like such good programs, but I think that's more on the loan officer side. If we could say, you know, go to these, they have a list of these programs that you could qualify for, I think that would be super helpful.
Sure. Our website is tremendous. We definitely have all of our programs listed there. We also have our list of approved lenders there. So the way it does work is that the borrower does work with one of our 90 different approved lenders and brokers to get pre-approved. To your point, some loan officers are stronger in the program than others. We do mandate that all new lenders take our required trainings. We have 5 different training modules that they take based on their different roles at the bank or lender, and we make them retake it within 12 months on top of that. Some lenders definitely embrace the program more than others. You can actually look on our website too and see which lenders do more volume than other lenders. Sometimes that's also helpful to some realtors to see which lenders are kind of specializing in it more. But then there's some loan officers out there that make it publicly known that they embrace and love this program, and that they're the ones that are really championing, you know, CHFA and out there trying to help first-time home buyers. But you're right, not every loan officer wants to specialize in CHFA, but we do the best we can. We do mandate training when they're new, and we require them to retake training within 12 months. We offer the free training to loan officers every month. There's a training calendar and they take it. But to any borrowers that want to learn more information about CHFA, our website has tons of great information on it. And if you want to stop by our table later, we can give you some more flyers too if you want to bring those back.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can I have Quincy? Brian mentioned housing counseling. HUD funds housing counseling agencies across the country and across Connecticut. If you gave one bit of advice, is to have your buyers visit early. Start with, you know, rental budget assisting, budgeting, planning for your first home. As you know, you can't just jump into home ownership, not in Connecticut. Our threshold is too high. So I think that is an underutilized resource, which CHFA and HUD both support, and I think it's just a great bit of advice you can give anyone you're speaking to, is take advantage of those free classes. To start the budgeting process early, it's a mindset, as many of you know. It's not just paying a mortgage, it's so much more than that, so you're successful. What we don't want is people losing that first house. We want them to be successful in that house, understand the implications, where to turn for maintenance, and that's the role of our housing counseling agencies that we support.
Well, I want to thank all of you for taking your time out of your busy schedules to meet with us, to share with us, and to help us to become better at the things that we do, and we can have giving us information about resources we can turn to better support our clients and customers. Would you give them all a round of applause, please?
All right, let's give a round of applause for Quincy and as policymakers, real estate professionals, community leaders, and advocates working together to break down barriers and creating lasting solutions. To take a moment afterwards and stop and see the partners and the panelists here and see how they can help you in your community. And thank you again for being part of this conversation, and we will look forward to continuing this work together.